Hello everyone, I'm Otaku Oni-chan. Before we start the video, I hope you can take a moment to press like, subscribe to the channel to support me, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to receive the latest videos. Thank you, and wish you all a great time. Please click on the super thanks button in the bottom right corner of the screen to support our team. Let's continue.
This story recounts how a boy entered a completely different and unknown world. A place without psychological and physical boundaries, was inhabited by a large number of dangerous monsters and constellations, which one must fight to survive. When Choi Yansung arrived in this world, not a single day passed without him battling various creatures. Visually, it seemed he didn't stand a chance against such monsters, but in reality, that wasn't the case. He was unlike the others. He was highly skilled in martial arts and wielded magic effectively. While facing a seven-headed dragon, another monster appeared behind him, a colossal planet-eating bear named Vulcan. These powerful monsters ruled their territories and guarded them fiercely. It was exceedingly rare to encounter two such creatures simultaneously, but this time, there was just such an occurrence. This wasn't the last surprise for Choi Yansung. He was caught in a web trap, presenting another challenge. A spider appeared, the master of the spatial cave, known as Audio. Yet, Yansung's face showed no anxiety or fear. For him, it was merely another form of entertainment. Yansung's strength meant he didn't worry about the fight's outcome. It felt to him as though this battle had spanned about 300 years. Of course, it would have been easier to deal with them one by one. The huge and powerful monsters were slain, but Yansung lost a lot of time. He wanted to quickly find a way back to Earth. He succeeded and earned the title of Invincible Training Master. His presence became more pronounced in this world, and as a constellation, he grew much stronger. When Earth first connected to the abyss, humanity learned that mythology wasn't merely a figment of the imagination. The creatures, known as constellations, were the closest beings to what people considered deities. They blessed their descendants, and the more descendants they had, the greater their authority grew. The land, with nearly 10 billion souls, was like a golden vein for the constellations that vied to take each other's offspring. Among them were more hypocritical creatures, those who sought to seize the land not with blessings but with sheer force. And it was this constellation that appeared to halt the chaos in the abyss. After the battle, young constellation Choi Yansung decided to grill a steak to restore his spent strength. A goblin approached him, inquiring about the contents of his pan. Choi Yansung replied that it was meat. The goblin was astounded that Choi Yansung was calmly cooking the meat of a bear that had devoured planets before. It was the ruler of the Goblin Kingdom. He noticed that the oil Yansung used had a very high concentration of magical power. Choi Yansung mentioned that he had fought with another constellation resembling a cow and had let it go in exchange for milk. The goblin was surprised that he had contended with a constellation, but Yansung explained that he really wanted to eat them. Therefore, his highest priority was gathering ingredients, as his hobby for thousands of years in the abyss had been cooking. He decided to indulge himself and eat meat for the first time in 300 years. The utensils with which Yansung ate possessed a very valuable property. When they touched food, they automatically made it fresh. The goblin was shocked that Yansung had defeated the constellation, but, instead of claiming the territories, had taken the milk. As Yansung savored the meat, the goblin pondered the fact that his master was categorically different from the other constellations. The goblin was timid but still dared to ask for a taste of the delicious meat dish. He put an entire fried steak in his mouth, but it had a very strange effect on his body, and the goblin began to emit a glow from all his orifices. The power of adamantium preserved the umami in the meat, thanks to the magical power from the oil of the mystical constellation. The meat rose to a high level, and the goblin's magic circle was activated. A new circle of mana opened up within him. The goblin looked as if he had tasted the best meal of his life. Yansung watched what was happening, now even more convinced that he did not understand goblins and their behavior at all. He began to reminisce about his past life, and he yearned to return. Let's go back to the unknown past, before he became an invincible master of training. Yansung was an ordinary person who played sports as his hobby. The teachers couldn't make him attend classes as scheduled because he spent almost all his time in the gym. Everyone wondered why he trained so often. Obsessed with strength from an early age, he attempted to train several times a day. As an orphan with no one to turn to for help, he realized he needed to train to protect himself in this world. The guy was an C+ rank hunter, a new profession that arose in the Age of the Abyss, a very respectable one where they protect people from the dangers of dungeons and monsters. Cores and items that drop after killing monsters are highly valued. Artifacts from dungeons attract the attention of many who seek fame and money. With nothing to lose, Choi Yansung became a hunter. Once, while working out in the gym, his team leader approached him. He asked Yansung to calm down a bit and advised that going to a B- rank dungeon was not wise. The teacher explained that they were barely clearing C- rank dungeons, and even there, hunters were losing partners. That's why one shouldn't even consider the B rank. The skills, magic, martial arts, and artifacts that drop in dungeons are great, but even with those, humans are very weak compared to monsters. The teacher inquired why Yansung was so indifferent to his life and asked him to think at least about his girlfriend, but they had broken up. Yansung had told her that he couldn't go on a date because he had training, and as a result, she suggested he meet with monsters instead. Everything ended peacefully and without arguments. The leader realized that this boy was hopeless. He only needed a gym. A powerful explosion occurred in the next dungeon. Yansung went hunting again, but this did not deter the monster from heading straight for him. The strength that Yansung had achieved through training helped him destroy enemies during such forays. While he fought the monsters, the rest of the team discussed how martial artists don't have it easy. They're tough, and that's why they make good tanks, though their damage is no match for wizards. They were curious why he decided to become a master of martial arts. One of Yansung's teammates replied that during the farm, a scroll of martial arts had dropped, but since everyone was interested only in magic, it became unnecessary. That's when Yansung decided to start studying IT. It didn't matter what others said about him, because he didn't regret starting to study martial arts. Martial arts are not as flashy as magic, but the true nature of martial arts, in which one receives as much as one trains, suited Yansung's outlook and temperament. In addition, he never canceled his desire to achieve more. He reached the rank of C+ through rigorous training, but there were several masters who had become stronger than him. He believed that he needed to practice even more and much more often. Yansung even used his sleep to train, learning various techniques in his dreams. He utilized lucid dreams for this, considering it a form of spiritual training that influenced his progress. During another such training session, a very bright light appeared before him, filling the entire space. It was the constellation of the abyss, and she was the benevolent goddess of Libra. For the first time in a long while, Yansung was truly worried and shocked. She understood his reaction, but they had little time before the goddess got straight down to business. The girl offered him a deal. She was prepared for him to ask many questions, but Yansung answered without hesitation that he accepted her offer. This confused the goddess, and she wondered if he really didn't want to ask her anything. But Yansung was interested in only one thing: whether he would become stronger thanks to this agreement. Although it was a simple question, the goddess didn't know how to answer it. After a while, she was still able to confirm that it would make him stronger. He smiled and said that was enough for him. Yansung asked why she chose him when there were many hunters with higher ratings and more fame. But it didn't matter to her because, as the benevolent Libra goddess, she had the ability to see the future. She began to explain that in a few years, a great danger would descend on Earth. Evil creatures would attack in full force, and when that day came, peaceful life would be destroyed forever. They would realize that the monsters and dungeons they had cleared earlier were just the beginning. She saw that Yansung was the key to preventing such a future. She promised to make him stronger through long and difficult training that would be unlike any human training. At that moment, the goddess was very upset because no reasonable being would agree to sign a contract under such terms. If a hunter makes a contract with a constellation, he becomes an avatar, something very complicated and immortal. His soul, attached to the constellation, would have to live with constant restrictions. All he had to do was make a decision. Mighty power and magic would appear immediately after signing the contract, with a guaranteed rank increase. The constellations were very impatient because they had to compete to get an avatar. From the expression on Yansung's face, you could see that he was very pleased with the offer. Yansung asked what kind of training the goddess had prepared for him. She had prepared a training facility for him in the abyss and warned him that time in the abyss and on Earth runs differently. He would have to train alone for several tens of years, or even hundreds, and even if he refused during training, he still wouldn't be able to come back. Yansung was scared. It didn't look like training but more like a test. But then he realized that this was exactly how those hunters became stronger. They signed contracts with the constellations. It would be quite illogical if they became stronger just like that. He thought that the other avatars were also going through this, but he was wrong because they had already become stronger when they made the contract. The goddess understood that this was a more difficult decision than she had anticipated, and she demanded a lot from an ordinary person. She wanted to give him a week to think and give her an answer, but Yansung raised his head and said that he agreed to all the conditions. The girl thought that he did not understand what he was agreeing to, so she suggested he take more time. But Yansung replied that he was not as attached to this world as the others. The only thing he wanted was to send one letter, and if he could become stronger, then as a bonus, he could save the world. She was very worried because of rumors that people on Earth are greedy and foolish. She was very happy that this time her prophecy came true. The goddess began to perform the ritual, and Yansung did not have time to ask why she had been wrong earlier. She no longer heard what Yansung was saying and began to activate the contract so that he could begin his journey. The goddess asked him to simply think about the letter he wanted to send, and she, thanks to her power, would leave it where he needed it. She earnestly wanted him to pass this test and then accept him as her avatar. Yansung touched the portal, and it began to warp. After that, the portal looked at him completely, ready to move him to the right place. The letter he was talking about appeared in the gym near the barbell. He teleported to the place where he would spend the next several hundred years. When he came, he felt that there was a completely different concentration of magic. This abyss looked like an ordinary S-level dungeon. The scientists on Earth thought that the dungeon was a part of the abyss that had split off, but in fact, there was absolutely nothing there. Perhaps it was a training facility. So, Yansung decided he didn't need to waste time and started training. The goddess hoped that this time she had interrupted the vision in time. This guy was a really good avatar candidate. Although the goddess of scales could see the future, her skills were not perfect. She could only see part of it, and the rest was guesswork and theory. The first thing she saw in the future was how Yansung was training in the abyss. The second was how he suppressed the invasion of evil constellations. She really wanted to make such a strong person her avatar. In her opinion, it was the perfect plan, and it didn't matter how long it would take. The other goddesses began to worry even more when she was so confident. They had a bad feeling. She only had to wait for him to arrive for training. She had already prepared everything, even the toys. But the most important thing was a safe place in the abyss. While Yansung was trying to train, he noticed something strange nearby. It looked very dangerous, and he thought that this was the first test from the goddess. He believed that it was impossible to become stronger and always be safe. If this test was really prepared by the goddess, then there was definitely a meaning in it. He had a feeling as if his body was tearing apart, but he had to endure it. You can become stronger only by overcoming pain and difficulties. This is the idea of the universe. After a powerful magical storm swept through, the illusion magic that covered the goddess's territory dissipated. But before Yansung could understand it, the magical storm started again. The other goddesses began to worry even more when she was so confident. They had a bad feeling. She only had to wait for him to arrive for training. She had already prepared everything, even the toys. But the most important thing was a safe place in the abyss. While Yansung was trying to train, he noticed something strange nearby. It looked very dangerous, and he thought that this was the first test from the goddess. He believed that it was impossible to become stronger and always be safe. If this test was really prepared by the goddess, then there was definitely a meaning in it. He had a feeling as if his body was tearing apart, but he had to endure it. You can become stronger only by overcoming pain and difficulties. This is the idea of the universe. After a powerful magical storm swept through, the illusion magic that covered the goddess's territory dissipated. But before Yansung could understand it, the the magical storm started again. Even the goddess herself could not have foreseen this. The girl should have felt his presence when he entered the training citadel, but there was no news about him yet. She left him 10 meters from the citadel. Why didn't he just go ahead and find her? The goddess allowed that earthlings might not act on their own. She prepared for him everything he needed for training. She even got first-class equipment so that he could train safely and effectively. She even got earth and toys for him so that he could have fun in his free time. The least she could do for a hunter who accepted such conditions was to prepare a comfortable environment for him to concentrate on his training. Her assistant arrived after inspecting the perimeter of the citadel, but was still unable to find the person she was talking about. She was confused because she knew exactly where she was sending Yansung. Angel guessed that such a storm could throw him far from the citadel. The goddess ordered to find him under any conditions and bring him to her. They couldn't just leave him to wander in the abyss. He needed to be saved. Even the constellations were able to assimilate only a part of this world, and it was simply impossible to find a person who was thrown by a magical storm. The strong flow of mana could simply destroy his body. Yansung felt like he was in the deep sea, although he had never been there. The magical power of high concentration circulated due to breathing. The magical power improved his body. His bones and muscles were strengthened, and his potential also increased. He spent 2 weeks in this stream, after which one of two outcomes awaited him. Either his body would break, or he would become stronger and stronger. He landed on the ground after such a long journey. He thought that the first training session had ended successfully. The place to which the magical storm transported Yansung was an empty corner of the abyss, not owned by any constellation, and he believed that this was just a place where the next training would take place. A huge monster appeared in front of him, and he thought that the training consisted of defeating it. But the fact was that it looked like an A-rank monster. Yansung believed that the goddess was overestimating him. This did not upset him because he was sure that the goddess had planned everything clearly. Yansung had plenty of time, so he was ready to fight this monster. He struck first and hoped to inflict considerable damage, but there was no reaction at all from the monster. It didn't even move though he hit with all his might. It only angered the monster. He did not give up and continued to beat him. He decided to train until he could destroy him. After some time, as Yansung joined the clan of hunters, Yansungs received a bonus at the auction. It was a book about divine cosmic art. For them, these martial arts were difficult, and they wanted to sell it if no one wanted to take it for themselves. Yansung was the one who decided to try learning martial arts. He always liked to read. They gave him the book and said that he had strange tastes. Everyone knew that cultivation took a lot of time and was also difficult to learn. If mana is the vital part of a sorcerer, then ki is part of the abilities of a martial artist. Damage depends on the amount of ki. Therefore, someone who cultivated slowly was unpopular. Yansung was different. He had the opportunity to learn a different martial art. He was very fond of divine martial arts. There was no special way of cultivation in space art, but instead, there was something more effective. The first ability is Space Fist, the second ability is Moonwalk, and the third, at the end, is a signature kick. The point was that this energy saturated each blow and then returned back to the body. Repeating this process accumulates a small amount of ki, and each hit increases it. And if this training takes place endlessly, then he will become a master of martial arts. Of course, in theory, it is simple, but not everyone is capable of such training. Yansung thought he had no talent, but he was very wrong. He had a talent for enduring fatigue and making endless efforts. He continued to deliver the same blow to the monster. It was thanks to his talent that he was able to withstand 100 years of repeating the same thing. As a result, he learned the B+ skill, the internal destruction fist technique. He received a new level of divine cosmic art. Yansung's persistence helped him reach the level of an advanced martial artist and defeat the monster. He had become a bevel hunter, but he still believed that he had no talent. He mentioned Shikiri, the hunter who was able to become an A-level master. He was the only martial artist who was able to reach the A rank. He said he was at the level of a sorcerer with 6 circles. When reporters asked him if he planned to apply for a higher rank, the master always answered yes. He never rested on his laurels and hoped to reach S rank, but he ended up getting much more. Yansung was upset that at this rate, he would be able to reach Shakir's level in 1,000 years. While he was in thought, he was able to notice something next to him. A stone snake crawled up to him, which he destroyed. After Yansung had cultivated Qi for decades, she could no longer ignore the attacks he unleashed. She looked at him with tortured eyes, and he agreed to pardon her because he had chosen her as a mannequin when she was just going about her business. He felt a little strange, although it was a training ground and he could go wherever he wanted. The snake crept up from behind and sat on its head. He was grateful to her for that because walking across the abyss was very boring. Yansung once again heard the sound that haunted him 100 years ago when he first entered the abyss. It was a magical storm. He thought that it was a gift from the goddess that would send him to the next test. He tried to force the stone snake to come closer, but even the strongest monsters could die in this storm. However, she had no choice but to agree. After traveling in this storm, the snake fell to the ground, and he was happy that he could move so quickly in the abyss. After he got to an advanced level, he realized how incomparable this storm was. He filled his whole body with mana and made himself stronger, getting rid of fatigue. It was a perfect restoration of his whole body. Controlling such power requires really great strength. He considered the constellations invincible. The snake tried to explain to him with movements that he had misunderstood everything. He was very lucky that he did not die as soon as he was caught in the storm. If he had not thought that this was a test of the goddess, he would have been torn to pieces. Yansung wanted to find some food. Although he hadn't eaten in 100 years, he still wasn't hungry. The snake called him and offered to take a stone from her. It was from her body, technically her flesh, so he could eat it. Yansung took this piece of stone and immediately thought that it was revenge from the snake for using her as a pair for 100 years, but it seemed that she had no bad intentions. He thanked her but was forced to refuse. No matter how hungry he was, he refused to eat the snake that was helping him. They began to embrace, and he received a message that he had learned all about the stone snake. He also received martial insight based on the movements of the stone snake and the fist of the stone snake. It was now strong enough to punch through the ground and also flexible enough to float through the air. Master Yansung immediately decided to use the new stone snake fist technique. He wasn't going to stop using divine cosmic arts, but that wasn't bad either. He began to understand much more, having received a new level of martial arts. He was looking forward to the next training session. The next workout was related to water. He ordered Onyx to move back because he was made of stone and would soon drown. He sped up and dived into the water. There were quite a lot of water monsters. Almost immediately, he received a message that poisonous water had entered his body. Because of this, his energy gradually decreased. If all his energy ran out, then his life would be in danger. His body began to resist the poison. In addition to all the problems, some creatures began to bite him. Meanwhile, Onyx was waiting for the return of his new friend, and he saw some movements in the middle of the reservoir. Then these small movements turned into a splash of water on the surface. He jumped out of the water and now understood what oceans are in the abyss. He saw something bright in the water at the bottom, but he did not understand whether he needed to get it. He did not understand how he would swim across the poisonous ocean, but if this was a task from the goddess, then there must be a way. Together with Onyx, they began to think about how he should act and develop a plan. He understood that first, he needed to accumulate enough energy with the space art to swim across the ocean. It was a logical decision, but it took a lot of time. He had already been in the abyss for 200 years. Yansung saw that Onyx was eating large stones. He also would not refuse to taste something, but thanks to mana, he didn't feel hungry at all. While they were going about their business, a monster washed ashore from the poisonous ocean. If you think about it, he was considered a fish if he lived in the ocean. Yansung was already thinking about how he would cook it, but first, he needed to prepare a place to cook. He began to destroy stones and make something. After a few minutes, he managed to make a knife and a board. For the first time, it was not bad enough. He put the monster down and started cutting, but while slicing, his kitchen utensils just started to melt. Yansung wanted to start eating him raw, but Onyx tried to stop him from doing so and decided to give him a metal that would not melt like that. It was adamantium, a treasure among treasures, very highly valued among stone monsters. He was happy that this metal did not melt when in contact with this liquid. With the fact that he is in the abyss, Yansung will be able to make kitchen appliances. He was finally able to understand what his boss was trying to tell him when he talked about hobbies. Now he will be able to prepare food that will help him in training. He had no choice and began to taste the monster. Although even on Earth, he followed a strict diet, his companions did not want to taste his food, so they always ate in the cafeteria. For him, food was only a source of nutrients. Since the monster was from the poisonous ocean, its meat poisoned him, but he was brought out with the help of cosmic art. It was strange, but after he took a bite of the meat, his Kai energy increased. The tongue was a little numb, but the most important thing was that it gave results. Poison is also energy, and as long as he is not poisoned, he can transform the poison into Ki energy. Yansung planned to go hunting and eat every one of these monsters that lived in the ocean. In this way, he spent several centuries catching monsters and increasing energy. During this time, Yansung's mind and body changed a lot. The deadly poison first entered his body and then was expelled with the help of divine cosmic art. He became immune to a large number of rank poisons. The poison no longer affected him, and he himself could use it for his own purposes. The goddess still hadn't called him. He was wondering if everything was all right with the earth. He has reached the level of an expert. On Earth, he could not even dream of such a thing. At this stage, he must be an A-level hunter. On Earth, such hunters are considered strategic weapons, but they are being used for their own purposes, so they must continue training to save the world. Yansung said goodbye to Onyx because he had to move on to become stronger. Moreover, he was of the stone type, so he could not follow him into the water because of his resistance to poison. The ocean was not considered a threat to Yansung, and now all the monsters from the ocean had nothing left but to flee. He seemed to have become the emperor of this ocean, and so he finally found the source of the magical power that he saw on the first day. Now he will be able to look at it. He reached the very bottom and saw that it was a portal, just as he thought. It was a portal to the place of the next training. He was very interested in what the next training would be. Divine cosmic art foresees a battle. All of his gates were activated automatically. Ki energy overflowed his body. The body of people who had reached the level of an expert would independently prepare for battle when they sensed enmity, but even people who are not experts should be able to feel it. Upon arrival in this area, an insatiable bloodlust that can only be found in a high-level dungeon was directed at Yansung. One of the monsters asked him what race he was. He answered that he was a human. The monster guessed that Yansung was here for the first time, so he decided to explain something to him. Yansung was grateful for the help, but he mentioned that newbies need to be beheaded to understand that this land is ruled by a bloodlord. Yansung believed that this training ground had a sufficiently strict code of conduct. The monster began attacking him with its giant sword, but he, thanks to his new skills, was able to simply destroy his weapon. It shocked the monster because normally he could destroy any newbie with one punch. After that, he delivered a powerful kick in response, and the master of this dungeon simply fell to the ground after this powerful attack. All the demons were nervous about this development of events. The ruler was humiliated before their eyes. Yansung said he only came to take the test. One demon asked if he wanted a test to get their master's attention. The monsters were discussing him. He looked pretty good for someone who looked like a wimp. Their boss ordered to kill this scum because he had never been made so nervous by anyone. He ordered them to kill and dismember. They attacked at the same time, but this did not stop Yansung from repelling their attacks and destroying the enemies. He tested all the skills acquired over several centuries, and he liked it very much. He understood that he would not be able to constantly restrain attacks in the open area. The demons were afraid of him but believed that, in any case, his mission was to be food for dogs. After these words, he ordered his dogs to attack and destroy this man. In the territory that was under the power of this constellation, the attribute is the second law of nature. It means that a person should always be ready to protect himself. Namely, in the territory that was under the control of the Lord of Blood, there was only one rule. All avatars must endlessly fight with each other. He had been fighting monsters and demons for a long time, so when he saw a building nearby, he decided to check it out. He knocked on the door with a shout of apology. The guy said that if the owner was there, He was asking to use his house as a shelter for a while. The demon met him and greeted him. He also added that Yansung came just in time because he had just finished cooking a delicious soup. Yansung was shocked that even in such places there were restaurants. The demon replied that to fight well, you also need to eat well. He apologized for damaging the door and asked if he could eat. He hadn't eaten properly for a long time. The demon replied that, of course, it was possible. He had a poisonous stew just ready, and then he just started pouring all the stew on Yansung. The demon laughed at him, but there was no more poison that could harm Yansung. He was able to control the poison. He said that he likes this restaurant. The demon was in a stupor and did not understand what kind of creature was in front of him. Meanwhile, he was already found by the monsters he fought with. They all wanted to kill him and almost broke down the door to enter the restaurant. The guy started to run away and finally left the cook-a-tip in the form of a knee strike in the face. Yansung grabbed a chair and waited for them to attack him. He could fight at this rate forever. It's almost the same thing he did several centuries before. The guy was the first to hit them with his improvised weapon. Yansung understood why the goddess gave him such a task because the level of understanding can be reached only in deadly situations. Meanwhile, the goddess kept asking if there was any news about Yansung. Her guardian angel also disappeared. The guy destroyed all the monsters that attacked him in the restaurant. Due to the increase in skill, Yansung's sensitivity increased, and he felt something strange near the cauldron. There was something unusual and powerful in that cauldron. He was grabbed by the leg by the cook, who wanted to kill him as well. He was surprised that this creature was still alive. He asked Yansung to leave the cauldron because he had gone through 9 circles of hell to get it. Yansung told him to shut up because he got it fair and square by defeating others, and the spoils go to the victor. Now, the cauldron and the entire restaurant belonged to him. In one martial arts story, Yansung learned that a retired martial artist owned a small classic diner. Initially, he came to find a suitable place for competition but unexpectedly acquired a dining room. The demon said it was his place, but Yansung told him to take it if he dared. Those were their rules. The demon chef had kept the kitchen reasonably clean the entire time. Yansung remembered his teacher's advice to everyone about having a hobby. He had dishes, ingredients, and even dough, which is why he could run his column of experiments. First, he decided to check out the products. He took the meat, and it looked attractive enough, but it was completely filled with poison. He no longer said anything nice to the demon. He found some strange fruit and decided to taste it, but it also turned out to be poisoned. Everything he tasted contained poison. He did not understand why there was so much poison in the restaurant. He would have to eat everything raw again and use his poison immunity to convert it into ki energy. Since the poison did not affect him in any way, he decided to use it for cooking as one of the ingredients. Yansung battled monsters to gain experience during the day and experimented with recipes at night. That's how his life in the dining room continued for a certain time, several hundred years. Another day, the previous owner of the diner came with monsters to take it back. The guy said he had a lot of respect for their determination, but it wasn't a restaurant right now. It was his own pub with unique recipes. This is what he told them during their beating. Once again, he destroyed a bunch of foolish monsters and continued his business. But this time, he acquired an A-rank skill, harmony of body and mind. Divine cosmic arts became more natural. This is a state in which the body moves in accordance with the mind. After acquiring this skill, the body becomes much faster than before. Although all masters want to get this skill, it is not easy at all. Magical skills are very popular and therefore often sold at auctions. But due to their popularity, not all artifacts can be purchased. All that remains is to crawl around the dungeon and hope for a miracle. He didn't know why, but he was able to achieve harmony of body and mind through constant mortal battles. All the masters would be jealous of him if only he could ever return. The owner's assistant flew over this building, and he hoped that those who received his blessing would not let him down. After another beating, the monsters could not understand why they kept losing to one person. It's been 100 years. As long as he is locked in this building, they cannot destroy him. It was strong enough, and they could not disarm him either. By the time the demons realized their strategy wasn't working, Yansung also realized he needed to change something. He stopped getting stronger Even though he absorbed energy from cooking, his progress stopped. He could no longer feel things on the example of the harmony of body and mind. They tried to lure him with adamant nuggets. They provoked him with fresh meat and reminded him that his strength would grow from it. But the guy understood everything and thought they were idiots if they really thought it would work. He opened the door and said that he could forgive a lot, but advised them to end this worthless resolution. They thought they had managed to lure him out with their methods and pounced on him. As it turned out, the demonic pub was a repository, and at the time, the reason for Yansung's stagnation. Being in the pub meant he stopped getting involved in the battles to the death that fueled his growth. Although the monster's acting was terrible, he came out to play along and fix his situation. During the fight, something healthy and probably powerful appeared in front of him. This monster thought he was a scared boy hiding in a building so that no one could get to him, but he was completely calm because he understood what he was really capable of. He said that he couldn't lose to them under any circumstances, and even if he wanted to, he couldn't because he needed to destroy monsters to increase his skills. Shikiri, the only AR-ranked hunter, described his strength as a state of overflowing confidence. Yansung couldn't understand it before, but now that he's reached the expert level, he does. Earlier in the battle, he felt scared all the time. He mindlessly attacked in different directions with his energy. That feeling he had of lacking self-confidence was completely gone. Now, he was completely confident. The world told him that he was stronger than all the surrounding demons. He learned to use the power of the enemy against itself. Yansung would never let meat and adamantium go bad or disappear, so he destroyed all the monsters and took them for himself. He also added that he would be happy to destroy them again if they brought gifts. After some time, they brought gifts and asked to compete with him, but when Yansung left the dining room, he did not see anyone. A few seconds later, he was fired upon near the building. They understood that he was based on close combat and decided to kill him with ranged attacks, but that was a bad idea. He successfully blocked the attacks with the divine cosmic art. His body became even stronger after the demonic attacks. Monsters didn't understand how he could move after being directly hit by spells. Meanwhile, Yansung gained invulnerability. The more the demons expended their strength, the stronger Yansung became. The difference between their strengths grew more and more after several hundred years of such fights. On another day, Yansung asked the monsters to disperse, but they were queuing up to fight an invincible man. They were upset that the pub was closing. He gave the first monster in line a number by which he could fight him first the next day without waiting in line. Resty Yansung said he would not fight those who misbehave. Somehow, he was able to bond with these monsters. On the other hand, it was logical after hundreds of years of battles. It was an A-rank hunter card, a magical item obtained during the first registration in the association. When the owner imbues it with their energy, it reflects the owner's stats. The guy decided to check his data because he hadn't done it in a long time and was shocked. He gained a lot of skills. On Earth, he could only dream of such things. The first time he got this card, the Divine Space Art rank was D. Now, he is already a level. He had never seen the rank rise so quickly, although due to training in the abyss for 1,000 years, it is quite realistic. Yansung had immunity to all types of poison, the ability to freely control poison, and gain energy while absorbing it. Another skill is the harmony of body and mind, the ability to use the body as you wish, the ability to redirect the enemy's power in another direction, even if it is more than one's own. Leather becomes tougher than steel and is able to block most of a variety of attacks. Demon's coherence is a skill he had heard about back on Earth. Hunters use mana or Kai as a source of power when using skills. When the quality drops, it results in a loss of effectiveness, but if you have a large amount of Kai energy, you can reach a legendary level by creating the illusion of 3 colors. While meditating, Yansung thought that this was only available to hunters who had learned the unique A-rank Divine Dusk art martial arts. Yansung didn't know that even though the Divine Cosmic Art is weak in growth rate, it allows you to generate keys stronger than any other martial art. A martial arts specialist means that a person has an ideal physique for learning martial arts. This primarily means that they have a high affinity. Yansung thought it was due to the magic storm because he never had any innate talents. He continued to think that it was all thanks to the plan of the goddess, and at that time, she still did not know where he was. Thanks to numerous battles, his understanding of martial arts has almost reached its maximum. It is believed that it is difficult to master one martial art in a lifetime. This skill will allow him to use different techniques depending on the situation. But there was another skill without a rank. The world resonates with Yansung, so he was close to the peak of existence. For the guy, it seemed like some kind of nonsense, and he thought that his card was simply broken. Yansung didn't even know that this was the thing that would make the whole earth lose its mind. While he looked at his hunter card, a beautiful soup was prepared. There were many monsters sitting in his dining room, and they all lost the battle to Yansung. They fought him for 500 years and could not win. He brought out new dishes for them and asked them to taste them before they left. They promised that they would first eat, recover, and then defeat this person. Testing new menu items became a daily routine. Yansung constantly practiced cooking. The monsters were surprised that this boy was skilled not only on the battlefield. However, there were those who did not like it at all. One of the recipes poisoned a monster, so he decided to remove it from the menu. While he was recording, some monster decided to be brave and challenge Yansung to a fight, but he did not have time to take a few steps before he was destroyed. After the attack, none of the monsters wanted to talk about their bad taste. Yansung has forbidden this monster from entering the pub, even when he is resurrected. Then everyone started eating his food, even if they didn't like it at all. He was happy that everyone liked his appetizers and main dishes, but in reality, many monsters simply suffered from stomach pain and discomfort. Demons who ate everything to the end did not come to the pub for more than a month. Also, he received the skill of culinary beginner of the abyss. His skills were no longer improving. No matter how much he practiced, he couldn't cultivate any more ki energy. It felt as if the Danon was blocked due to being overwhelmed. Shikiri was only an expert. Despite the fact that he wanted to become stronger, he no longer had anyone to use as an example since there was no longer a stronger master. He himself must destroy this wall. There was only one way to become stronger. This was a battle with an enemy that was several times stronger than weak demons. He needs to compete with someone stronger than him. The guy heard someone knocking on the door and asking to call the owner of the establishment. Yansung opened the door and immediately said that they had arrived on time because he had prepared excellent meat. He offered the guest to choose a place while he brought him meat without rice. This monster was not at all like the others and therefore aroused interest in him. It was a new demon. Yansung looked at his stats as he showed the table. He said he had heard enough about the invincible man and would like to see his skills for himself. He knew that this guest was much stronger than himself. He possessed great magical power that was strong even for a demonic race. He was happy because it was the beginning of a new phase of training. Yansung presented him with the dish of the day. Then he prepared it and brought it to the table for the guest to try and appreciate the taste. He could see very clearly from him that this was a very strong demon. The guest ate the whole dish and said that he heard that the owner is very fond of collecting valuable materials. He saw him pull a very valuable resource out of his pocket. It was a large piece of pure adamantium, such a size Yansung had never seen before. Yansung offered an extra portion for that price because he thought he paid too much. While Yansung was examining the stone, the guest asked him if he was really a man. The demon said that his name was Varago, and he was the first avatar of the Lord of Blood, to whom he gave a bloody axe. He had an offer from his master. He asked what the offer was. The master has been following him, and he wants Yansung to become his avatar. Varago was sure that Yansung would accept his offer, despite the fact that he is a traveler from another world. He is not crazy enough to go against the will of the Constellation, especially when he is offered such an honor to become an avatar. But it turned out that the guy refused, yet thanked him for the offer. He was outraged that Yansung refused to cooperate with his master. He felt this great pressure coming from this powerful demon. It was the same strong opponent that he had been waiting for so long. Varago himself could not understand why he was refusing the master's praise. The Lord of the Blood respected the trait when one did not hide the fighting spirit from someone stronger than him. The demon started yelling and asked why he didn't like him, rejecting his offer. Yansung said that he had already promised. Then Varago asked what promise he was talking about. If he is an avatar of another constellation, then he does not feel his presence at all. Yansung replied that he promised the constellation that he would become an avatar when he passed the test. The demon wanted to say that maybe he was being deceived, but Yansung did not like it and said that if he wanted to fight, then he would do it with pleasure. But he just wanted to tell him that his information was illogical and unsubstantiated. Constellations enter into a contract with an avatar because of their desire. No constellation will accept an unworthy person as an avatar. Therefore, the constellations usually immediately conclude a contract so that others do not do this. And if they want to train an avatar, then they do it on their territory. This is due to the fact that cases of interception by other constellations are possible while it wanders from outside. But Yansung disagreed with him and said that he missed something. The constellation he promised could see the future, and he was sure she chose this strange method because she could see it. Seeing the future is a rare ability, but she trusted such an inferior ability. This constellation was brave enough. Yansung began to talk about his training and the trials he faced after being caught in a magical storm. Vargo said that it made even less sense. A magical storm is a phenomenon that cannot be controlled. Not even the constellations can handle it. Yansung thought that at least one constellation should control him, but Vargo replied that if it were real, such a constellation would immediately conquer the entire abyss. Vargo asked again if he was sure that he got into the storm by accident. The demon said it wasn't too late to change things, but he just asked for silence. Yansung didn't think Vargo was lying. Now he learned a lot. He was enjoying the process of getting stronger so much that he didn't have a single question until this moment. He didn't understand how he could be so naive. And why hadn't he thought of it before? He wanted to cry, but he could not, because every tear leads to a decrease in his masculinity. The demon saw that Yansung was in a great hurry and asked where he was going. He replied that the plans had changed and now he understood that he was not at the training facility and he needed to return to the ground urgently. Vargo was sorry, but he would not be able to leave the Bloodlord's territory. He was also sorry that he had to destroy a gem like him, but he asked not to worry because his master would bind his soul and resurrect him. He did not like the demon's mood and refused to play his games. Vargo noticed that he had a special technique, and he did not feel any magic, but his movements were faster than teleportation magic. It was a divine cosmic art movement technique that utilized key energy. Now the demon understood why the master was interested in him, but he was not going to continue these games. Vargo used the bloody baptism technique. He was very strong because he could use so much mana. Yansung wouldn't be able to last long, even with his invulnerability. This technique, in all its glory, shows the difference between the power of Varigoth and the power of a human sorcerer. Thanks to the skill of harmony of body and mind, Yansung's senses were heightened. The divine cosmic art warned him. This was because Yansung was in great danger. But in a crisis situation, Yansung's mind was very calm, and the discomfort from the fact that he wasted his time due to a misunderstanding had already disappeared. It was like the moment he was caught in a magical storm. It is not speed that is important, but a sense of flow in order to dodge. Due to this control, his degree of mastery of martial arts is increased. He acquired the S-rank skill Unsurpassed Speed, a movement technique that allows you to move to a desired location. Vargo was shocked that he had managed to avoid a bloody baptism completely. Until this moment, he thought that only weaklings studied martial arts, but now he expressed his respect for him. In the Abyss, magical skills are the most popular. They use up mana, and those who use magic can take an unlimited amount of mana from outside. On the other hand, martial arts drain the user's internal energy. Compared to magic, martial arts have a limit. After meeting with him, Vargo understood what martial arts were created for. It was really impressive. Once, he heard that the slaves had staged a rebellion in the territory of a certain constellation. They wanted to resist the laws of this world. If they went against the constellation, they could no longer use mana. However, it was difficult enough to stop the rebellion, and it was all because of their strange ability, which could be used without borrowing mana from the outside. He guessed that they used martial arts, but what if he used magic? Vargo said that after his body had melted from the bloody baptism, he would have already met the Lord of Blood. But Yansung knew that it would not work with him yet, and that he could not be defeated so easily. Vargo admitted that he really was an unusual person, But he is Varago. His master gave him a bloody axe. The demon jumped on him and hoped to tear him to pieces. Their confrontation was very tense. Yansung was forced not only to attack, but also to constantly dodge blows. Vargo, even with its size, managed to sneak up behind and attack. He had only to defend himself from the last attacks, and that was it. He believed that magic was dishonest and planned to find vulnerabilities in close combat. He did not believe that magic was capable of everything, and for the first time in a long time, Yansung was on the verge of defeat, but his mind remained sane. He was faced with an enemy who was significantly superior in strength and abilities. He had nothing to offer in return. With each attack, he felt himself getting stronger and stronger. Yansung decided to gather all his energy at one point to create a key fist. Vargo appreciated his tricks, but questioned how much he could do with what he had left. The use of all his skills was only suitable for defending against attacks. The problem was the attacking power needed to break through the dozens of layers of defense with which Vargo protected himself. The key fist is the result of compression, but such compression was not enough for an effective attack. In theory, the Kai fist did not fully utilize key compression. It is possible to compress to the state of materialization, and this technique is called Kai materialization. Shikiri, the great martial artist on Earth, was the first to materialize the key, but he could only hold it for a moment. Yansung continued to suffer from the demon's attacks. He had enough energy and strength only to defend himself. The fact is that Yansung surpassed Shikiri's strength 100 years ago, and he began to prepare for this blow. Vargo did not expect such a development at all, and even began to worry about his life. He gathered enough energy and struck the demon. Blood began to flow from his mouth. His face immediately changed, but he understood that if he used this ability too often, his ki would simply run out. The rest of the demons were watching this spectacular fight, and they understood that at this rate, they would wipe out the place. Their battle continued for about 6 months. This man had already become a legend. His Kai was being depleted very quickly due to the use of the Aura Fist. Yansung was at a dead end. Although he could break through Virago's defense with a materialized attack, he couldn't use this attack very often due to the large consumption of ki energy. Some of his skills quickly restored his energy, but he still needed time to use the cosmic aura again. For Varago, this was extra time to rebuild his defenses. He said that they had already wasted a lot of time, and he could no longer restrain the Bloodlord, so he decided to use it. The Bloodlord blessed him with the power to defeat this man. On the surface, it seemed that his body was shrinking, but in reality, it was only getting stronger. He was filled with the energy and magic of the abyss. His possibilities became almost limitless. He looked different now. The demon was very grateful for his master's support. Yansung watched the process and understood that he was in great danger. He knew why Varago had shrunk in size, but the smaller he became, the stronger he was. As soon as the demon finished its transformation, it started attacking him from different sides. The ability he used made him smaller in size, not to weaken him, but to make him very fast and sharp. If before that Yansung was significantly faster than him, now Varago looked much more agile. This situation literally destroyed all of the guy's advantages in this fight. Now he was just defending himself, and it was not known how long he would be able to hold on and take a lot of blows. As a result, as expected, his invulnerability was pierced by another attack. He needed time to recover. He understood that if he lost his concentration, he would die. He could not relax. The demon, in turn, did not think at all about reducing the number of his attacks. Ever since Yansung entered the abyss, he had never used all of his Dantian and Ki. In an abyss where there were so many different and dangerous monsters around, using all the energy was equated to death. Varago was not at all interested in his problems and knew that Yansung now did not have enough energy to repel his attacks. Yansung understood that he was now in a critical situation and had to use all of Ki's energy. It was a difficult choice, but he had no other option. If he didn't do it, he would simply die. He could not save his strength to see through the next day and leave a reserve so that he would not fight at full strength. The demon was already preparing for the next attack, and Yansung decided to seize his opportunity at that moment. Just before Varago attacked, Yansung countered with his energy. He managed to repel the attack and strike back. He received a new technique, space breakthrough. The divine space art improved. The demon was surprised because the blow caused him significant damage, pushing him several tens of meters away from him. Vargo felt that he needed to defeat this boy at all costs to save his reputation. If he didn't end it, then Yansung would only get stronger with each successful attack. His energy was restored, and he gained new abilities, which could lead to a point where the demon would not be able to harm him at all. If Vargo allowed this, it would be a disgrace, as he would lose to a human in his territory, which is ruled by a bloodlord. He could not stand by and watch a new constellation being born in the territory of his great master. After some time, Yansung could defend himself more effectively and with fewer resources. Vargo saw a light in front of him. Something very strange began to happen, and the demon seemed to be in another dimension. Now Yansung realized that when he released the key, the wall he faced and the amount of ki that was in his dantian were unimportant because the dantian is the world that lives inside his body. If he could bring it out of his body, then the whole world would become his. He had reached absolute understanding of the materialization skill. Now he could use the materialized ki energy with ease. His skills began to improve one by one. He gained powers that were unmatched by anyone in the ordinary world or the abyss. The abyssal constellations, who had been watching the fight, took an interest in Yansung as he was finishing off Vargo to become the victor in their battle. Different constellations showed different interests. He did not know that they were watching him. The Bloodlord was very angry. Yansung did not stop beating him until Vargo begged for mercy and surrendered. His body lay motionless on the ground and could no longer resist such a force. He had never defeated an opponent who was stronger than him, so he was looking forward to rewards and new abilities. He defeated the first avatar of the Bloodlord, Vargo, who was given a bloody axe. He gained the power of the whole world thanks to the skill of a master of his craft. Defeated, Vargo said that Yansung had now earned the right to reject his master's offer. After their fierce battle, he thanked the demon with all his heart. Vargo also added that although he did not know which constellation offered him to become an avatar, he could not accept it under any circumstances. He wished him to become so strong that no constellation could look at him with disrespect and, most importantly, he wished that Yansung would become famous in the abyss and become a star. He pondered and tried to understand his words correctly. He began to think about what mission the constellations perform and for what purpose they receive avatars. Then he thought about the lady who offered him to become an avatar and realized that there was some truth in Vargo's words. She was trying to treat him dishonestly. He said that he understood everything and would definitely listen to his advice. Vargo was grateful for such a fight. He said his name was Yansung. The demon said that he would wait for the day when they would meet again on the battlefield. After these words, he turned to ashes. Yansung said that he should definitely come back because he has to pay back the debt. When Vargo disappeared, Yansung began to think about his words again. Perhaps his mission is to become a constellation and save the world. After he became a master, he felt at a level where he began to perceive the world around him as himself. He felt something he had not felt before the gazes of the constellations that watched his every step and deed. They assessed him and discussed among themselves. He wondered if their power could be compared to anything at all, but he was confident that he would be able to match them if he became a little stronger. Nothing was impossible for him. He began to receive messages in which some stars asked to meet Yansung. The constellations of the abyss could not move. They were constantly aiming at each other's territory, and if one of them accidentally left his place, the others would immediately seize it. That is why the constellations watched the world without leaving their thrones, and they did it through their avatars. While Yansung was in thought, he received a message that the Lord of Blood had set a reward for his head. Then, every creature in the area began to hunt Yansung to be recognized as the master. Now, Yansung imagined these constellations as people who communicate by looking at a stream. They were talentless. He declared that he would become a constellation when they watched him, so he had nothing to fear in the real world. When Yansung was at school, one of the teachers was watching a program on TV. There, they showed him about whom he told Yansung that he had signed a contract with the stars. Everyone envied him because they also wanted such a contract, but in reality, everything was not as fabulous as it was told on TV. These were the words of this guy, but no one saw anything wrong with it, only advantages. But in reality, he said that the rules of the constellations bound him, and he was under surveillance 24/7. Then Yansung just watched him while the teachers were jealous of him and didn't even want to understand why he said that. Now Yansung understood what the hunter was talking about. Obligations to act in accordance with their rules and to obey the orders of his constellation, and if he refused, he would face a terrible punishment. Being an avatar that everyone envies means being a slave in golden chains. Yansung was happy to destroy everyone who wanted to get a reward for his head from the Lord of Blood. He wanted to be strong from childhood, not so that such strong boys would pay attention to him and try to subjugate him. He wanted to have his own path in which only he himself would be the master and mentor for himself. Vargo was right because he could not leave his fate to the constellation after he had come this far. Various constellations continued to tempt him and lure him into their chains. It was very beneficial for them to have such an avatar, but Yansung refused everyone and did not take any gifts from them. Yansung understood that it would be nice to have magic, but he didn't know how to use it. That's why he decided to achieve everything thanks to martial arts, which is what he practiced and improved for 1,000 years. One of the stars called him a hipster. He did not like this at all and considered it an insult. But then the very constellation sent him a large ingot of adamantium as a gift. Although Yansung was fascinated by power, he was still a scoundrel from a capitalist society, so he quickly took such a gift for himself. This constellation then began to offer more valuable minerals if he agreed to sign the contract, but he replied that he himself planned to become a star, so there was no point in trying to lure him with gifts. He wondered how they even knew about hipsters. This word is not used in the abyss. Yansung decided to go back and check on his pub after a long battle with Vargo. He expected to see the warehouse in disarray after the mess they had made outside. While the constellations were trying to hammer their values into his head and persuade him to sign the contract, Yansung found his adamantium barrel. He no longer looked at the messages that came from different constellations. He didn't care about mockery and temptations. He simply gathered his most important things and embarked on a long journey. Yansung did not know what awaited him next. He said goodbye to his pub and thanked it for the emotions it provided during this time. Meanwhile, in another dimension, various two-headed monsters roamed the territory. They heard some incomprehensible voice nearby and decided to investigate. It was the guardian angel of the constellation that had sent him to training and, as a result, lost him. Now, the angel was trying with all his might to find him. The angel interviewed everyone he met along the way and showed a photo to make it easier to identify him to strangers. However, these monsters were very angry and rude. They didn't care who he was or why they were looking for him, so they weren't going to tell any angel, even if they had some information about this person. While the angel was communicating with one monster, its friends began to emerge from underground and surround him to further investigate his visit. They believed that their angel had completely lost his sense of smell after hiding behind his constellation and now dared to enter their territory. This area was not owned by any constellation, so they lived by their own rules, and everyone who came to them had to obey. The most secret and isolated zone in the abyss was the free land where the biggest scoundrels lived. The angel concentrated on his mana, and with one movement, he knocked out these hideous monsters, silencing them for good. Their teeth simply flew out of their mouths from the impact. The angel approached them again and tried to ask if they had seen the person he was showing. They cautiously answered that they had not, and that they were just envious of how they looked. The angel thanked them for the information and flew away, while the rest of the monsters silently watched as their comrades were beaten. An angel of the benevolent goddess, still searching for the man throughout the abyss, talked to races that could speak and endlessly asked if anyone had seen Yansung. Since avatars rarely leave their territory, the constellations were wondering what was happening. Just as people support streamers, so constellations support avatars of other constellations. For the constellations that sit in their territories and are bound by their own rules, watching the avatars of other constellations was just ordinary entertainment. Why did the goddess send her angel on an impossible mission? Because he would fulfill it well, not paying attention to the temptation of other constellations, even if he himself would consider the mission impossible. Meanwhile, in an abandoned sector of the Bloodlord's territory, Yansung continued his training. There was great power in his movements. Despite his level, he continued to train as conscientiously as before. He tested new techniques and abilities to be able to use them in battle when needed. Due to the degree of the master, the divine cosmic art was perfected. Now the amount of energy was not important, and the skill of the master would allow him to use all martial arts perfectly. But Yansung continued to practice his fist of space very persistently, just like when he first learned the divine cosmic art. He put his whole soul into every blow. He was very persistent and patient. This was his talent, although he believed that he never had any innate talents. The guy enjoyed constant exercise and training. It was his hobby and his calling. He did it better than anyone else. During another training session, he received a message that he continued to live as he liked, and the power of his personality increased. When Yansung decided to leave the Bloodlord's territory after defeating Vargo, a change occurred in his secret skill. The world resonated with him because he was close to reaching the peak of his existence. His new title was the Invincible Training Master. Yansung realized this when he reached the rank of Master in Divine Cosmic Art. Then he perfected all his skills. Now they were perfect. It seemed that he knew how to gain the status of a constellation after receiving the degree of Master. The world seemed to start whispering to him. Meanwhile, the demons found him. As long as he was in the Bloodlord's territory, they could easily find him. He must raise his essence, guided by his principles. The world told him that this was the way to become a constellation. These monsters did not cause any problems for him. He destroyed them single-handedly while he devised his plan. He liked to train all the time and never lose. It was perfect for him. Defeated monsters lay on the ground, talking about the fact that even the first avatar of the owner could not defeat him. So why did they challenge him at all? Yansung found a corner in the abyss where the constellations did not see him and continued to train. Also, after the battle with Vargo, he received 2 new skills. Adept Giant Fighter. His essence grew if he engaged in a battle with a strong opponent, and Skill of Self-Control. A creature that can defeat itself is the strongest creature. The power of an entity grows as it lives in accordance with its essence. If the Serpent of Plague and Darkness used a healing spell, or if the Lord of Blood tried to solve everything peacefully, then the power of their existence would weaken, and their strength would be greatly reduced. In order for him to be able to use this skill, he must compete against someone who is stronger, but he cannot lose even once. It sounds very difficult, but he liked it. Yansung saw that another monster was approaching him, which definitely did not have good intentions. He hoped that this time the monster would be stronger than him. It was something very large and powerful. It was difficult for Yansung to see it, to identify it, because it was constantly moving. He watched the monster very carefully so as not to miss its probable attack. But it turned out to be Onyx, whom they met at the very beginning of his journey through the abyss. During that time, they became very close, so when they met, they started hugging. They were happy to see each other. When Yansung opened his eyes, he saw a lot of monsters behind him, but these were Onyx's children, and Yansung began to congratulate Onyx on the addition to his family. The stone snake came to him with bad news and seemed to beg him not to stay in this place and run away, but it was already too late. Just at that moment, the ground began to crack and a fault formed. Old Comrade Onyx and his family were monsters the size of an entire city, but the creature that appeared was on a completely different level of existence. It was something devastating. The whole netherworld and the real world were afraid of him. A supergiant monster that has never appeared on Earth before, it could be classified as an X-rank. The whole world must be on alert. He radiated so much magical power that even goosebumps ran through his skin. He was objectively much stronger than Vargo. In terms of strength, he was probably on par with the constellations. But it did not live up to expectations. It was a hydra, a 9-headed serpent that brought chaos wherever it appeared. At the moment, Yansung didn't like the attention of the other constellations. There were constellations who became like that by watching Yansung's hikes, but most mocked or derided him, especially constellations like the Bloodlord, whose first avatar failed and lost to a martial artist. To them, Yansung was a beast who had not yet come of age. Therefore, he was forced to go to a neutral zone where the constellations could not follow him, but the lawless zone was a place where the strongest ruled. The Hydra wasted no time and began to demonstrate its powers to everyone present. It was a place ruled by monsters equal in power to the constellations, and moreover, they were not bound by rules like the constellations. It was an amazing display of magical power, akin to a bulldozer at a construction site. His good giant killer skill was activated, and if he could defeat the Hydra, his personality strength would increase. He began to activate all the skills that could aid him in this match. Due to his strength, he would not be able to win, so he needed a plan in which he could use his advantages. His skills compelled him to fight this monster, but even without them, his choice remained the same, and he was not going to deviate from his true path. He began to provoke her, forcing her to attack first, although Yansung himself did not yet understand why he needed it. The snake looked at him, and it only made her more aggressive. Yansung approached and declared that she had no right to abuse his friend and his family, no matter how strong she was, and she would regret it. Obviously, she didn't appreciate it and wasn't going to listen to insults anymore. He was forced to lean in because she started using telepathy. She vowed to destroy him. Even the constellations fell to their knees before her poison. Their breath could burn them alive. Bloodlust flowed from her 9 heads. Most opponents would simply freeze due to telepathy and bloodlust, but Yansung was already accustomed to this. He had been in many battles on the territory of the Bloodlord. Hydra didn't understand why he wasn't afraid of her and didn't start falling to his knees like other opponents. Yansung was not going to flee and delivered his first blow so that the snake would understand what he was capable of and that no one could break him. With this attack, he destroyed one of the 9 heads of the snake and was not going to stop. His friends and family were shocked by such a result and such determination from him. They were very angry and determined to take revenge on this impudent boy at any cost. After some time, something began to happen to the body of the snake from which the head was cut off. She was able to regenerate her head using the divine regeneration skill. After recovering, she stated that Yansung was able to cut off her head, but now he must pay for touching her. The snake was confident that no hero and no constellation could withstand their poison. It was strange for him that she was talking about what she was going to do. Why should she reveal her intentions to the enemy? For some time, they accumulated poison in each of the heads. It was a monster that even the constellations feared, which meant that they didn't care if their enemy knew what they were going to do next or not. The result would be the same. The 9-headed Hydra only indicated that the enemy would wait further with his fate, and the enemies had no choice but to somehow change it or run away from it. After the snake had released all of its accumulated venom, a glow could be seen amidst the green mist. It was some kind of large ball, and in the middle was Yansung. Thus, he was able to shield himself from the effects of the poison on his body within this energy ball. The snake couldn't understand how such a weakling could do this. His head felt like it was going to explode because of the telepathic scream. If he didn't have an enhanced immunity to poison, he might have been hurt, but the sensations were still different from those during the fight with Vargo. It far outweighed the power of divine cosmic art and materialization. Now it was Yansung's turn to attack this monster. He planned to cut off its head once more. During the attack, Yansung felt the effect of increasing the power of the personality act on him. He remembered that it was written in the description for that skill. With the help of the battle with Vargo, Yansung had nicely improved his skills and now faced the 9-headed serpent. Far from being cornered by such a powerful monster, he was able to deal significant damage to the Hydra with one blow, chopping off her heads one by one without stopping. However, it wasn't the end, as her heads regenerated very quickly. So when Yansung prepared another attack, the heads regenerated, necessitating another plan to defeat and outwit such a powerful monster. His breath was very dangerous, and he had to be wary of the poison to avoid being ensnared. Yansung had an invulnerability skill that was supposed to protect him from any harm, but even in the fight against Vargo, he couldn't block all the magic, and the Hydra was much stronger. It was impossible to block invulnerability attacks, but he was able to move across the surface of the poison thanks to one of his moonwalk abilities. He simply moved along it as if on the ground to reach the mouth of the snake itself and attack it again. No matter how much poison they released at him, he did not receive any damage, and they, in turn, simply wasted their strength. If Yansung had been a little faster, he would have been able to reach the snake's head before it released its venom and attack sooner. While Yansung moved between safe zones, repeating to himself that he wanted to get faster, a miracle happened. The flames and poison emitted by the Hydra stopped, and time slowed down as if fulfilling Yansung's wish to speed up. Hydra could not control its breathing. None of the martial arts Yansung knew had this effect, so he didn't know what it meant. The snake continued to fill all the free space with its venom, and Yansung was still trying to understand where this ability and this effect as a whole came from.